Hello and welcome to the first in-depth video guide following the release of Breach Refined patch. This is going to be an in-depth guide, which means that I will be taking a thorough look at the choices of armor, weapon, infusions, affixes, and runes. And I will also be providing as many gameplay tips as possible for new and less experienced players to have an easy time adopting this build. If you are an experienced player and you are only interested in looking at the build components, I have also included a quick rundown of the build components right before the start of Crucible. So feel free to use the chapter markers to skip to the section of your interest. This is an electric build, and I am calling it the Robin Hood build. It does not use Ring of Determination, and it should be a beginner friendly build as long as you have the components to build it. So, without too much of an introduction, let's look at the choice of main hand weapon. For my main hand, I am using a Midnight Blade. This is a legendary weapon that synergizes extremely well with this build being an electric build. If you do not have this weapon yet, you can use Tucked Falcon. The reason why you'd want to use Tucked Falcon is because the jump attack in for this weapon actually executes, I think, 5 or 6 instances of damage, which really helps you with building up your focus as quickly as possible. Let's go back to the Midnight Blade. For the infusion, I am going with Lifesteal. The reason I have picked this weapon is threefold. A, it actually adds shock buildup, and this will completely negate the need for you to slot one of your armor pieces with shock buildup. Second, if you are successful in executing a parry, you will gain an insane amount of focus from that. And third, if you are able to land yourself a backstab, it will completely fill out your focus bar. For the bow, I am using a patience. However, you should be using a pale ash. And that's because pale ash, tucked falcon, and midnight blade use the same stat requirements. The reason why I have chosen to go with patience is A, because I like these aesthetics of it, and also this weapon was set up before the patch and I didn't want to use any more emperors in rerolling a new bow and getting the stats that I wanted on it. So if you are going with Tucked Falcon or Midnight Blade, please make sure that you are using Pale Ash. On your bow, you will, aside from the arrow, you will want to slot it with Lightning Arrow. The reason why you want to use Lightning Arrow, although your bow is already infused with lightning, is that this rune is used in a combo that you will be using a lot in order to dish out as much damage as possible. Second reason is that lightning arrow does not need to be wound up like a normal bow attack. So you will shoot an instant shot that will have maximum range, maximum damage, and it will also apply lightning. Next, you want to go for evasive shot. This is a dodging shot. Once you execute it, your character will jump back and shoot once. The reason why you want to have this is because bow builds and most builds right now after the changes in the patch are extremely stamina hungry. And there will be instances where you will be out of stamina, you won't have enough stamina to actually dodge an attack, and if you're being overwhelmed by enemies, you need a way of getting away from them. And this is here to make sure that if you don't have enough stamina to do so, you will most likely have enough focus to execute it, and this uses about 42 or 45 focus. Next, you want to have multi-shot. The reason I am going with multi-shot over cone shot is because cone shot actually has a wind up to it, and it will also root your character in place while it is executing the ruin attack. You don't want that. This is not a build that can take a lot of punishment from enemies, and You don't want your character to be rooted or stationary while dealing with enemies that can possibly 2 or 3 shot you. For your infusion, you want to go with max stamina. The reason I'm going with max stamina instead of, let's say, lifesteal is lifesteal is kind of an overrated stat. Most of the life regain you actually get in your builds come from health gain per kill. Lifesteal, especially after the changes that was made in the patch, is not as important as a rune as one might think. And also, as I mentioned before, you need a lot of stamina for this build to work. Now you might ask, why not use stamina ring? The reason for that is you also need this build to be front heavy on the damage. That means you need to deal a lot of damage with 1 to 2 shots, and for that to work you need to use as many rings as possible in order to get as much damage as possible out of the build. Second, I have actually used all of the stamina rings in making of this build, and none of them worked. So, next for your affixes, you need to go with damage increase by up to 10% based on durability. The reason why you want to take this over any other damage affix, namely the 30% damage against large monsters, is because again, you want to be front heavy on the damage, and you need all the damage that you can get to clear the Crucible and the Pestilence zones. If you were to use that specific affix, you will have an easier time and you will do more damage to the bosses, but you will spend a lot of more time and you'll be putting yourself in a lot more danger getting there. So I suggest going with 10% damage based on durability. Second, you want to go for lightning damage infusion. Next, you want to go for stamina recovery based on durability. Now, I have finished this off with indestructible and repairable combo. These 3 affixes are flexible. If you want to change them so that it suits your individual playstyle, you can go ahead and do so. All the builds that I do, I try to make them as flexible as possible so that there's a lot of room left for personalization. And I also don't use Ring of Determination because I have a sneaking suspicion that at some point this ring is going to be removed from the game. And if you're using a Ring of Determination, then there really is no need for a build. Anything will work with that ring. For armor pieces, I am using a mesh headgear, and I am using Dredge Knight Hood. For the infusion, I am using focus gain increase. For the affixes, I'm using lightning damage increase, gain focus on inflicting any status effect, healing increase up to 15% based on durability, and damage taken decrease also based on durability, finished with drain focus in combat. Again, aside from the lightning damage increase and gain focus, the rest of the affixes are flexible. For your main armor piece, you want to go with a cloth piece. I am going with Rebel's Voice. This is Odessa's armor, and I am again infusing it with max stamina. I'm going for focus gain increase based on durability, damage taken decrease based on durability, max health increase based on your focus, and overall speed increase after inflicting shock status, finished off with drain health in combat. Aside from drain health in combat and damage taken decrease, the rest are also very flexible and you can change them to suit your individual playstyle. For your gloves, you want to go with a pair of leather gloves, and you want to infuse them with focus cost decrease. Then you want to have shock buildup, focus gain based on durability, and gain health on kill. All of these are mandatory. You need to have all of these on this build to work, especially if you're going with the Midnight Blade that doesn't have health gain per kill. And you want to finish it off with indestructible, unrepairable combo. You can change those two as you see fit and the build will still function just fine. For your pants, you want to go with a pair of cloth pants. You want to slot them with stamina cost reduction. Then you want to go for focus gain increase, healing increase, and damage taken decrease based on durability. And you can finish it off again with indestructible unrepairable combo. For your rings, you want to go with a Band of Calmness. Then you want to go with Rune Ring, and you want to finish that off with Ring of Broken Promises. As always, you want to have Plague resistance on all your rings. Then you want to split the rest of your resistances 3 ways between heat, electricity, and cold resistance. That's pretty much it for the build. I will just mention that there are 2 main combos that you will be using with your bow. The first combo is a quick high damage combo that you will use on most mobs, and that starts with your charge shot, followed quickly by the lightning arrow. The second combo that you will be using on larger enemies and bosses starts with your charge shot again. You'll follow it up with a multi-shot, and then follow it up with a quick bow shot without charging it, and then follow it up again with multi-shot. If you start that combo at full focus, you will have enough focus to execute the entire strength without having to do anything more than I have already mentioned. There are other choices for weapons and bows as long as you keep the same configuration for the runes, they should work. If you want to go for a pure dexterity build, you can go for jackknife and hunter's knife, and you can pair that with yew longbow, or you can also use singular purpose in conjunction with patience. Actually, no, that's incorrect. Do not use singular purpose with patience. You are going to have to find another weapon that uses dexterity and faith if you are going to be utilizing your main hand weapon. Again, the reason why I've chosen to go with patience, although it doesn't share the same affixes, the same stat requirements as the Midnight Blade, is because I mainly use the Midnight Blade as a tool to increase shock buildup and gain focus. That would be it for build explanation. So without any further ado, let's get started with the Crucible. I hate Elsa here. He keeps saying the same thing over and over and over. So, right before we get into the Crucible, here is a quick recap of the build. For your main hand, you want to use Midnight Blade or Tucked Falcon. I am using Lifesteal Infusion on my main hand weapon. For your bow, you actually want to use Pale Ash, not Patience. On your bow, you want to have Lightning Arrow, Evasive Shot, and Multi-Shot. Then you want to infuse it with Max Stamina. You want to have damage increase by up to 20%, Lightning Damage Infusion, Stamina Recovery increased by up to 20% based on durability, and Indestructible Unrepairable combo. For your headgear, I am using a Dridge Knight Hood. This is a mesh helmet. I have a focus gain infusion, lightning damage increase, gain focus on inflicting any status effect, healing increase up to 15%, damage taken decrease by up to 10%, and drain focus in combat. For your chest piece, you want to use a cloth. I'm using Rebel's Voice. You want to infuse it with max stamina, focus gain increase, max health increase by 10% of your max focus, damage taken decreased by up to 10% based on durability, and overall speed increased by up to 15% after inflicting shock status. For your gloves, you want to go with a leather piece. I am using Rebel's Grip. You want to infuse it with focus cost reduction. Then you want to have shock buildup increased by 20%, focus gain increased by 15%, and gain health on kill following with indestructible unrepairable combo. For your pants, you want to use a cloth piece and you want to infuse it with stamina cost decrease Then you want to get focus gain increase, healing increase, both based on durability, and also damage taken decrease based on durability, followed by indestructible and repairable combo. For your rings, you want to go for Band of Calmness, Rune Ring, and Ring of Promises, Broken Promises. I do not have an alternate ring that would actually work with this setup. Okay, the way this build works, or rather the way you want to approach fights with this build, is that you want to pick off as many enemies as possible from as safe of a distance as possible. This is because the build itself does not have any provisions for dealing with large groups of enemies. There is no real AoE built in the build, and on top of that you are also quite squishy. So you really don't want to get up close and personal unless you have to, because you're not you don't have AoE, you don't have a lot of armor, you also will be losing a lot of stamina trying to dodge attacks from the enemies. So there is a way to make this build work a lot better with the playstyle of players who like to go in, do melee damage, and then also use their bows as they retreat. But in order to do that, you basically have to first get yourself a better, well, not better, just a different set of armor that gives you more damage reduction. And then as long as you're able to replicate the affixes and have the same runes, so you should be fine. This build should work with that playstyle also. But in this current iteration of it, the way I'm playing, you don't really want to go. Also, if you're wondering why am I bothering with these, is because you get a lot of focus back from your knife attacks, and I always use them to top myself up. So that was the first combo where you do your charge shot and then follow it up quickly with the lightning arrow. And I will try to show you the second combo, which you would be using to take care of larger mobs. As soon as I find myself a big enough enemy that can take the damage. Also, always try to use your backstab attack if you are fighting against a single enemy towards the end of the stage, and if you're low on focus, because it fully refills your focus bar. That was a good one. So in a confined space like that, where you just need to get rid of an enemy that is advancing towards you, just go for the same combo. If you have enough distance, go for your bow attack and then follow it up with the lightning arrow. Or if you also need to create some distance between you and your enemy, go for the bow attack followed up by your evasive shot. Okay, let's show you the combo on this guy. So you'll open up with your shot, and somehow this guy would have died anyway, so couldn't really show you. One thing to mention, if you want to do quick follow-up shots on your enemies, make sure that you are also advancing towards them. Obviously you'll do this if this is a one-on-one situation, only one enemy on the screen. But if you don't do that, because your bow shots will knock back the enemy ever so gently, you will miss your follow-up shots if you are not advancing towards them. Okay, maybe we can do. I'm not going to charge my shot, but what you want to do is you want to charge your first shot. And that's the combo. So you'll shoot them once, then you go for your multi-shot, then you shoot them again right after your multi-shot, and you should have enough focus to execute your multi-shot again. Also, if you haven't noticed, the shop from Essential now stocks quite a few new items. And I think it has a larger, more impressive array of items than Finley does. So up until this point, I had not gotten any echoes, so no extra damage or anything. And as you saw, I had no problem dispatching the enemies and getting through the Crucible until this point. But we'll be getting some damage echoes. What you want to do with your echoes is that you do want to focus on damage increase. And secondly, you want to focus on stamina. And then if you don't have anything else, you'd go for focus or survivability. You should have enough focus regeneration in the build that you're not going to really need any focus echoes, but if you don't have any choice, more focus generation is always good. Okay, bad idea. Is someone left? Really? He can target me, but I can't target him. Some rooms are going to be challenging, that you're not going to have a clear line of sight to your enemies to pick them off before you advance through the room, but you should try to do it as much as possible. This room, for example, is one of the hardest ones to deal with, especially if it's in the later stages of the game. The heck? They're all congregating over there. What's that, a Glumpkin party? Yeah, if I break all these, I'll probably have enough to get that last echo, but I think I have enough damage already as is. Don't need to do that. No way that hit.
It never ends.
Anyways, that's the build, and this is what it can do with a few really overpowered damage echoes. But I think the first half of the Crucible would serve as a fair representation of what this build can do under normal circumstances. The only thing that I can think of to mention, if I haven't already mentioned through the run, is to be careful with your charged shots, and do not charge your shots if you have a ledge behind you. Did you guys notice the 2 Ring of Determination? This build will work with Ring of Determination, by the way. I don't think there's any setup, because you can't really call it a build if you're using Ring of Determination. Okay? You can throw anything in there and it will work. But this is the build. Does not rely on the Ring of Determination at all. It is completely viable for you to run pestilence areas, to do multiple crucible runs if there's a certain item that you are hunting for. And that's it. If you have any questions, please do leave them in the comments. And I hope you enjoy the new patch. I I have been having some fun with it. I'm not completely happy with all the changes, but I do think that they will be addressing a lot of the issues, if not all of them, through hot fixes. Don't know where the game is going to end up in the long run, but as it is right now, it's definitely an enjoyable experience. It could improve quite significantly, but that's a topic for another time and another video. Hope you enjoyed the guide, and hope you'll be able to replicate it and have great success with it. And I will see you all in the next video. Bye.